Welcome to Module 42, Attacking Strengths and Weaknesses in a 3-5-2. This module will look at some of the attacking strengths and weaknesses of a 3-5-2, and then show you some ways to minimize the weaknesses. Let's start off by looking at some of the strengths, listed here. The first strength that we will look at comes from the basic setup of a 3-5-2. Teams in this system will almost always have a numerical advantage in the middle third of the field with the 5 midfielders that they have. Related to this is the flexibility that teams in a 3-5-2 will have in the attack, with 5 midfielders and 2 strikers. We will discuss this more in other modules, but we can see the options that could exist with quality interchange. Of course, with any of these variations, the 3 central midfield players should be sure not to overcommit forward. The next strength we will look at is the high number of options that will exist when building out, which again is largely due to having 5 in the midfield. As the highlighted attacker for white drives forward and gives away possession, the sweeper takes a few touches forward, and we can now see all the options that exist. As always, it's essential that the transition takes place quickly, with the wingbacks providing immediate width and central players finding gaps through which to receive the ball. This is also the result of another strength of a 3-5-2, which is in fact the presence of the wingbacks, one of whom we can see here, helping to stretch out the opposition. Because he's moved out wide quickly, we can see that this midfielder for white is getting pulled out, allowing more space for the center midfielders to find those gaps. The player will instead choose to play it into one of the attackers. Let's pause, rewind for just a second, and switch angles. To get your bearings, the highlighted player is the sweeper who has just one possession. Another strength that was not on our list will be shown here. Watch the movement of these 2 strikers. With a 2-striker system like this, they can move off of each other as we see, to create space and time to receive the ball. Typically, one will play against the last defender, and the other will drop underneath to link up the midfield line and the front line. Then, we can see the last strength on our list, which is the ability to play direct, a result of having 2 strikers to receive it and strong numbers in midfield to provide support options. This is of course reliant upon the fitness of the midfielders, but is a huge strength when fitness levels allow them to get up and down the field quickly. Now, let's look at a few weaknesses, listed here. Bear in mind that these weaknesses are primarily related to the role of the wingbacks in covering lots of ground. The first weakness on the list is the potential for the system to turn into a 5-3-2. Whether this is a result of the flow of the game or a lack of fitness from these wingbacks, it's very possible for the formation to morph into a 5-3-2 like this. This is not inherently a bad thing, and is technically a good thing in the defensive phase if a team is purposeful about it, but it does limit the attacking numbers a team might have. The next weakness is also related to the last. Here, we see the general attacking shape for the blue team. But, because of the high fitness demands of the wingback position, we can see that the wingbacks have not advanced very high up the field, and as a result, the attack is concentrated heavily in the central area of the field, making it easy for the white team to defend. So, it's clear that the wingbacks need to be very well conditioned to avoid these weaknesses coming into play. The last weakness we will look at is the potential for limited numbers in the attack with 3 center backs. With a back 4 system like this, the outside backs are almost always encouraged to push up. However, with 3 center backs, it can be more complex, especially when you take into account the number of attackers for the opposing team and whether or not your team has center backs that man mark. We won't dissect every possibility in this module, but we'll stress the importance of communicating to help with this. Especially in cases where you are playing against a lone striker, pushing on one center back to at least provide support options in the attack is usually a good idea. If your team plays with 3 in the back, we encourage you to ask your coach what the role of the center backs should be in the attack. Before moving on, here is a recap of what we went over in this video.